Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see so many of you here already. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good. It's cold here in the UK.
It's cold here in Toronto too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's warm here in the community space, which is great. Welcome everyone to this week's Vercel Community Session. Really excited to have everyone join us. If this is your first time in one of our sessions, I'm Pauline, and this is Jacob. You may have seen us around in the community space answering questions. So it's always a really great opportunity to jump in here to connect with our community, customers, and our users live. If you are tuning in on any other platform, so on X, for example, and you want to engage with us in the chat, be sure to join our community platform over at community.vercel.com, and you should see a banner for this session. All you need to do is sign in and click going in the event box to unlock the chat. I'm really excited about this session today, Jacob.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be a good one. If you're going to hang out in the chat, just remember to be respectful and follow our code of conduct. And I'd like to introduce our guests today. We have Andrew and Malta. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey team, look at that background. I can't stop fangirling over this background. It's awesome.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be the last time you see it because we are moving offices in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to take this with us.
Oh, you're not going to recreate the space?
I mean, we're going to take the sign. But
I think
the background's going to very substantially attached to the wall. I don't think you can.
I don't think the wall has enough triangles, right?
No.
Yeah. I hope the new office has like a blank space with like triangles where you can just stick lots of triangles. That's the new design. Amazing. Shall we kick off, Jacob?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we've got a few questions here. I guess the first one for you, Malta. What is the most important metric for engineering teams?
Oh my God, we're doing management stuff here. Famously, I only have 2 reports, so why do I care? That's our CPO that has to care. No, I'm kidding. I have some personal hot takes on this, but what I really care about is more at the team level that people iterate and make progress over time. And there is this notion of velocity, that's both important for the iteration, which is that you're moving fast and you're moving the right direction over time, but also there has to be some throughput. If teams just go hiding for 3 months, I think that never works well. And so but it's overall, there's a little bit of vibes, where I feel okay, they're doing well, they're not doing so well. On the other hand, when it comes to performance reviews, we at Vercel just went through a cycle, which was fun. And I think I do look at personal throughput in terms of number of PRs and so forth, which is sometimes controversial, but I think it's a really good starting point for a conversation where you ask okay, you're in the lowest 20 percentile. Why? Or you're also the opposite, right? You're in the top 10 percentile. Why? Is this you personally, or is it your team, or can we learn from you? So I think it is actually very worthwhile looking at how kind of from a pure throughput perspective things change between people.
Okay, so you're not quite measuring by lines of code written, but you're using that as a symbol to look in and say, hey, if you're not shipping any lines of code, maybe something else is wrong there.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good signal, and there are quite stark differences in larger engineering populations, and it's really, really fascinating to try to explain where they come from.
Cool. Related question: is there a really bad metric? What is the worst metric that maybe engineering managers or leaders would tend to use that you think is not helpful for an organization?
Andrew, do you have an idea for really bad? You can do wrong answers only, but stuff people actually do.
Worst metric would probably be spending time in seat and just measuring attendance, maybe.
Right. That's pretty common. It's also whenever you say, okay, I actually do care about how much code people write, you get people pushing back who kind of take this in this like absolutist point of view, which is what I just said, like there's nuance and you have to like dig in. And so if you actually did it in a way where you actually said, okay, that's what we care about and that's what we're gonna rate your performance on, then people obviously just like any metric can be bad when people are incentivized to game it. So if you take a metric and no nuance, then it's always a bad metric.
This is a great first question, so thank you for that, Jacob. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. We see everyone at Vercel ship something pretty much every single week. And a question that's come up is, when someone at Vercel wants to ship something radical, how does this decision process work? For example, the workflow development kit, how did that start?
Yeah, I think Vercel is a company that has an interesting mix of being both top down and bottoms up. And so you will find both pathways. Like what you don't find as much is actually the middle. Like, so it's there's leadership kind of given broad guidance and often ideas of what we should do. And also on the other hand, very much kind of the engineers saying, I'm excited about this and I'm going to build, for example, a prototype and demo it at our weekly demo day session. And pretty often, like, excitement builds just from seeing it, like, being almost real, that then the company decides, okay, actually, maybe we need to staff this as a bigger effort. For the workflow project in particular, and we should maybe go into details a little bit about what it is, but this is, I think, if I recall correctly, like, we were definitely very interested in just like, what is the right way to model out like complex long-running agents on Vercel, and at the same time, what's the right way to like make it really like idiomatic to implement like sophisticated backends on Vercel. And then we kind of, over quite a while, like drove it down onto this use case. In this case, we actually ended up hiring a person who had a startup in this space. And he was like, it's not really fully catching on. Can I just come and build it at Vercel? And that person also was a prior intern. So there was like an established relationship.
Yeah, and from like a customer perspective as well, obviously we listen to our customers' feedback, and they also influence our roadmap in a way. Can you describe that sort of process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a super broad one, because there's like, I think we all try to embed ourselves like super deeply in the feedback, like, and that's, I mean, it's like customer in like the broadest sense, right? It's certainly the community platform. It's like people on X, people on LinkedIn. Then we have a process where like our sales engineering team and our field engineering team are kind of collecting kind of what they hear from like that. So this is more directly like prospects and customers. The prospect might say, okay, well, actually I love Vercel, but I cannot buy you because you're missing like this random security feature, right? Which I need in my organization. And then there's a more straightforward prioritization that you then just go ahead and build it.
How do you balance those new features? So say customer or potential customer, they want one feature and that's what it's going to take to land the deal, compared to, hey, we already have an existing roadmap, engineers are already allocated working on certain things. How do you choose when to divert course for maybe something a customer needs?
Yeah, I think that like from a super top-down perspective, it makes sense to think of it as a pie chart, where you essentially just like effectively you define your values as a company by specifying like this is how much we invest in each of these categories. And it's because it's not healthy to like drive any of them down to zero, right? Like because there's always going to be like feature requests that can dominate your roadmap, but that's not like 2 years down the road, if you haven't done any strategic stuff that you thought was right, you're in a bad spot, right? So I think in particular for this like direct customer request, we have essentially allocated a certain percentage of our overall engineering time to do this. In practice, there's also like a little bit of bias on a per team basis. Like we have a team, like because I already mentioned, like it's pretty common that people say, okay, like I'm using this very particular like Microsoft technology, and I want you to work with it, right? And we have like a team that does our auth and identity, and they're frequent kind of targets of this type of feature requests. So whereas like maybe if team working on like observability might not have as many of these like must-have features that folks come up with.
How do you build your engineering teams? So for example, like how do you choose what a team is going to focus on, and how do you staff the team? A few front-end developers, few back-end developers. What structure do you think works well for building proper engineering teams?
Yeah, what we do usually, like again, like there's a distribution on a per team basis. And one thing that's interesting in particular for Vercel is that we have infrastructure teams that are product teams, whereas most companies have infrastructure teams that are infrastructure teams, right? Because we sell infrastructure, so so that there's a little bit of a different makeup sometimes in these teams where they're very infrastructure heavy, even though we think of them as essentially profit centers because they make the product. But usually, like I think for example, our observability team, the team building our feature flags products, or even the workflow team, you want to have just a good mix so that the team can move independently. So they should have folks who are like product engineers, so who are very comfortable building the UI for the management interface, and you have people who focus on the very particular, often infrastructure side of the equation. And in that case, also someone who's actually doing the like framework design. So I think we try to have teams that are pretty small. Like sometimes there's a manager who has more reports, but in my experience, the ideal size for like people working together is about 4 on the engineering side. You can have a PM there, and you can have a designer, but like 4 is pretty good number.
Yeah, I totally agree with that size. Andrew, a question for you that has like popped up a couple of times actually, and I've also wondered myself, what do you do in the CTO's office?
I try to scale Malta as a person. Malta is in this unique position where he does a lot of internal engineering work, prioritization. He also does a lot of experimentation with the latest and greatest in all things like AI. And he also does a lot of customer interviews and customer calls. And he just wants to do more of those. But there's only one Malta. So he needs to be able to push some of that onto more people and just be able to do more of what is more important to him.
Great. And Malta, how are you planning to expand your team in the near future? And if so, what are the kind of qualities you're looking for?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I think we maybe in opportunistic fashion. I think this was an experiment hiring Andrew that has been very successful. So this might be because of Andrew, or because it's a good idea, or both.
Maybe we need more Andrews.
Maybe Malta's actually meant to be a manager. Who knows?
Yeah, it's like, hi Pauline, what's Andrew's performance review? No, I think what I would also add, Andrew has also been like basically just kind of searching into like different product teams, helping them ship. Like he, for example, shipped Bot ID as a product, like essentially end to end, with like a little bit of help here and there, but like that was his main thing. And so that's just a little bit of flexibility of kind of putting resources somewhere, and it's in a way that doesn't go through the prioritization process that we previously discussed. But yeah, for this role, I think what you need to when I first thought about it, I was thinking like, is this actually is the person in their current role, are they a sales engineer, or are they, because I was definitely always thinking, okay, they have to interact with customers, or are they currently a software engineer? And like what it ended up being is that this is a role that's like very like diverse. And so if you think about like the different responsibilities as like a as a spider graph, which I like to do in general for jobs, like where you have different dimensions, and like every human is going to have like different like amplitude on each of the dimensions. And so you like often you could imagine different personalities actually succeeding, even though they're like slightly different, and they but it was always clear that I would have to find someone who is like more of a generalist than being like super deep in one topic.
Yeah. I actually, what you described there is how I also think about building the community team at Vercel. I kind of need someone who is kind of a generalist, but can really dig deep in certain areas. And it works very well at Vercel, given like our products and our ecosystem. There's a question that's come up in the community chat, actually, but I think it's more of a feature request, and I don't know if this is the right platform for it, but I'll read it out anyway. So this is a feature request which apparently has been in the talks for a couple of years now. So the feature is removing a default domain after adding custom domains. Even after disabling in environment and branch assignments, we can't disable the default domains Vercel assigns, and it becomes an issue for SEO. Apparently, this was opened up in 2021.
No, I'm actually super aware of this, and I think we should definitely fix it or like give a more idiomatic way to get out of this. But generally speaking, what you can do today, because it's definitely like it's more of a convenience thing, because there's definitely solutions for this, right? So, but I will admit that solutions are not super elegant. So what you can do today is, first of all, everyone should always have Vercel authentication on. It's been on by default for a while, but many of our longest, most loyal customers might come from a time when we still had this as an, I will say, unfortunate upsell, and people might have chosen not to buy it. So, but it's it's been included and like the on by default for a long time, and it's really important because it kind of excludes every single URL except the ones tracking your production branch from this set, right? So it limits the problem. And I think the question is targeting this correctly for like those like auto-assigned standard URLs. The thing that you essentially need to do today is you go to the firewall and you make a firewall rule that targets that domain. And depending on what you want to do, you either block it or you redirect it, and that works perfectly fine. Obviously, you could imagine a more like idiomatic and more straightforward way to do it, or maybe even saying like, I don't know if that's the right default, because what definitely happens is, let's say you have a side project and you push it and it's on the Vercel app, and you're like, cool, right? You tweet it out, people are excited, and then you're like, this is traction, like I'm going to buy a domain. Now you actually do not want to block that old domain, right? Like you just want to redirect it. So that's definitely the right call. In that case, you don't want to block it.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question. If you do have any follow-ups, feel free to drop it in the chat or drop it in our community. We'd love to hear more.
If anyone from the domains team is listening, maybe they can like ship it by tonight.
Yeah, right now.
This doesn't seem like the most difficult question. Like we already have like this redirect feature, right? Like, so it would essentially, they would need to like add the default domain to that. It might even be possible. Okay. I'm gonna check this.
Congratulations, commenter. You've nerd sniped Malta.
I love
maybe
that.
then my answer is actually you're wrong. We already have this feature. Which
I
didn't
mean,
want to say. But I'll try it out.
As a follow-up, there's some patchwork we can do from our side, like middleware and redirects, but it'd be good to have this as a toggle on Vercel directly, which, I totally get.
Yeah. Okay, so I stand corrected. You can actually, there's an idiomatic way to do this today. You can redirect it. Good.
Oh, amazing.
Great. Anyway,
cool.
Shipped live.
No, but there's still a feature request saying, like, basically to remind people that once they assign the first domain that they probably want to do that, right? And because it's very easy to forget. I actually just went to my own homepage and I had not done it, but I didn't know. It works.
Love that. Actually, kind of related because SEO was mentioned, and I feel like this is a topic that you're very passionate about, and obviously relates to Google. You used to work on search at Google, which was massive, and then you came to Vercel when it was tiny. And as Vercel grows, do you see any Google here?
Okay, I mean, there's a few ways to answer that question because Google is like a lot. So one of the things that I think one of the things that Google innovated on and got right, and every company should follow, is that there is a career path that is not the management chain. And so I think we just straight up copied that one-to-one. And in a way, I'm like also an example of this, where like, I mean, maybe not technically in IC, but I like, it would be very different if I would be managing our engineering team.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something we straight up directly copied. Overall, we have a lot of ex-Google employees as employees. And, I feel that it wasn't completely obvious to me whether there will be a culture fit, because it's quite different. And I think by and large, this has been working really well. Like, and even if we don't count Lindsay, our like oldest VP of engineering, not old as an age, for like first longest serving. Like he was at Google before, and we have Mike, who leads our infrastructure team, VP of engineering. He comes from Google. A bunch of engineers there. So yeah, we do have the DNA similar with Meta because of the affinity to React, obviously. So it definitely runs in the veins, but the company is extremely different. Like, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, it's very. I was culture shocked when I joined in a positive way.
All right, we have another question. So AI agents. What kinds of agents have you seen customers shipping to production? And are there any like big mistakes that teams are making when they try to ship these?
Cool. Yeah, I'll answer. Maybe Andrew can jump in on some of the technical details as well, because he's been shipping away himself as one of those things. Like, if folks have had by any chance saw the Ship AI keynote, I was talking a little bit about some of the examples and some of the principles that we've seen working. It's a really exciting time, I think, because this whole new world opened up of like things I can build, and that opens up like a set of low-hanging fruit. And I think the mistake people are making is that they actually try to build agents that are too hard to build, and then it doesn't work because the AI is too dumb. And maybe in a year, the same software would just straight up work because the AI got smarter, right? And so and this has actually been true for a while. I think about this as Venn diagram of like, this is like software that's not easy to build, and software that is really high business impact, and you need to find the intersection. So like, one of the ways how I discovered like looking at what agents work is this like question that I mentioned in the keynote: what do you hate most about your job? And I think that like the reason why it works is that like if you ask that to an employee and of your company, right, or maybe it's a customer's employees, it discovers work that like kind of lends itself to automation. Like, it's currently done by a human because probably requires this like mild cognitive input, but the reason why people don't like it's very repetitive, and like it doesn't challenge them. And so that uncovers lots of agents that actually are like easy to build, right, and high impact. Like one example from Vercel itself was how we do enrichment of like leads that come through our contact sales form, where we did a lot of work from different systems to gather together data, and very clearly you can automate that now. And also very clearly a year ago, it was hard to automate because sure, you could just try to find the LinkedIn profile, but maybe they misspelled their name or they use a different name, and like an agent like figures that out, like it finds the right person with some confidence. And like a year ago, this would have been actually very difficult to build. So that's kind of the unlock that you see today. But it's a very large area. Like, if I'm a startup, I might be much more ambitious, right? might want to solve something hard, and that's also okay. Just need to be willing to put in a little bit more work.
Yeah, I'll add on to that, which is the story about D0, our data science agent. We went to our VP of data and asked him, what do you hate about your job? And he is the one in charge of how we warehouse our data, how we do the analytics, how we do the ETL, everything. And so the worst part about his job is when people not knowledgeable about the data go and ask him to write queries, take time out of his day, figure out what to join, and then write it and then execute it. And so if we could automate that part of his job, he can stay focused on what he needs to do a lot longer. And so we actually did it. And it's actually an open source reference architecture that Malta announced during ship. But also we use it internally very expressively to do anything from user signups to product metrics to trends that we see. And it all started with just this conversation with him being, what do you hate about your job? And then we went through different phases, experimentation, using the AI SDK to try different models. And we eventually landed on something that feels pretty good. So we were able to reach this workable version to completely automate this one part of his job.
So Jacob, what do you hate about your job?
I love my job so much.
He has to say that. We're live.
Everything else goes in the anonymous feedback at performance review season.
He loves working with Remix live.
No, it actually reminded me. I wanted to give a shout out to the community team because we have a similar thing. Obviously, the community team's main responsibility is to make sure all of our questions that come in from our customers in public, in our community space, on X, on LinkedIn, on Reddit, we're there to help them. And one of the biggest issues here is that we have a lot of docs. We have a lot of things that we ship. And so it's really hard. I think the part of my job I don't love that much is trying to find that knowledge. Where do I even look? Where can I start? And so one of the things that we shipped this year, Anshuman from our team shipped a V0 integration in the community that essentially gives us we call it a good first answer, but it's essentially sending us some links to docs, in our own docs, previous threads that we can literally just take and then share it with the customer right in our community space. And that just makes everything so much faster. So then everyone wins because we find the answer quickly, and so does the customer. And everyone is just happy.
I ditto that. Unbiased opinion, but I actually use that good first answer to answer a lot of community questions about bot ID. So it actually works.
I love that.
Nice.
There you go. It's good to hear that someone else outside of the community team uses that. That's great.
What's also I think really interesting perspective about how human motivation is that I now feel literally 10x more motivated to write docs because the AI will read it, right? And so it just gets used so much more than by chance people finding in search, actually reading it. Was all kind of an arduous process, and now every word you write kind of actually directly contributes to helping people.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a little frustrating when you spend so much time writing docs and then people come in and they ask the questions. It's like, have you read the docs? I put a lot of effort into those.
Right, but now it's so much easier to ask ChatGPT or your good first answer feature that ultimately people they don't read the docs, but they benefit from the docs because they're getting them reformatted to answer their specific question, which the docs would never be able to do because they were always going to have to be much more generic and broadly targeted.
So we have another question here. How do you engineer a product that can quickly adopt new tools or technologies as they come out without needing to be rewritten every time?
So can you maybe we don't know, but I'm curious because there's different aspects of new tools, right? Because first you talk about product, and that triggers for me okay, is it the tools that are interacting with the product? Or is the question, okay, I built something using, let's say, framework X, and then framework Y comes out, and like I have FOMO and I need to rebuild everything. Jacob, do you know what this was aiming at?
Yeah, so more imagining, say, new services. So like there's a new AI tool that comes out, or a new library you want to integrate with, and you want to see if, hey, but maybe does this solve the problem that our product is solving better? But
I mean, my general advice would be to not worry about it too much. Like because you can't know what the future requirements will be, and so any form of anticipation and over engineering to make yourself more flexible for the future will like lead to you being wrong about what you need to be flexible about and taking much longer, right? I know that like engineers have this tendency to abstract and over engineer, but like ultimately it's better to hold back. Now, once you have substantial experience, you get a good intuition where like I'm wrong and you should indeed make things more flexible. But you should always be very like sus about your own intuition, because the default intuition is to be overly aggressive with abstraction, and like because the other side is now you get it, and because your code base is overall simpler, it's now easier to adopt the new thing, right? On average, right? It's not as easy as if you had planned all along to make it easier to adopt this specific thing, but because you don't know what the specific thing is, it's now easier to in general adopt new things into the code base.
There are also like a category of technologies that are just abstractions, like Drizzle or Prisma, that let you switch out your underlying database for very low cost anyway.
Yeah, it's a good example, right? Like for specific things, and like the older the technology is, the more like you'll have something like this. Although it did trigger my personal pet peeve, which is that I think it's very unfortunate that Node.js does not have like a JDBC style database abstraction. Anyway, I don't want to rabbit hole there, but like
we could.
like the thing is that you have Drizzle and Prisma, right? Which they're super high level. And literally, Prisma invented new ways to talk to Postgres databases, for example, and Drizzle didn't. But you still have to configure how to talk to the database. Whereas the way like it was best practice in 1999 was that your programming language came with a way to talk to databases that wasn't convenient, but you could put the convenience layer on top, so that when you switched from MySQL to Postgres, you like your Drizzle and Prisma didn't have to change. I didn't have to know about that, right?
Well, I mean, now that's a good segue to Buntime, where they now ship with a native SQL client built in.
It's true. Big fan of Bun. Yeah, we shipped Bun this week. This was like
Exciting.
It was a major request. And
yes, it was in our community as well. Yeah, we had to bump that up and be like, we shipped this, everyone, and got loads of reactions there. Awesome. I can see the chat. We've got a couple more questions, so I'm going to pick one out now. So how has the tech stack changed over the years with the scale of users? What database, structured, unstructured frameworks, backend, or the deployment platforms have changed over the year? I guess that's...
Yeah, no, I can answer this. Like, there's like we do a lot, so it's like very hard to answer in general. I've been with Vercel for almost 4 years. One of the things that definitely changed when I joined, we had not yet launched a production, but we're already in the works of shipping our first Go-based production service. And now most, still not all, of the servers that's what I would call do production serving. So if you go to any of our customers' websites and there needs to be TLS handshake, there needs to be routing, there needs to be serving of static files, there needs to be like communication with serverless functions. All these services are written in Go. And that was a process that we only were starting 4 years ago. We still have an Nginx, which is a C++ application in the middle there, but like long term, we're going to be a Go shop. For our primary database, we have not changed it yet. We use Azure Cosmos DB, which I think is actually quite a good product. And we are hitting scaling limits, but we are hitting scaling limits at like 100 terabyte. So it's a large database that I think with other database technologies, you would have already been in like not the greatest state of your life. And so we are migrating / doing new projects on AWS DynamoDB, which is a less convenient database, but one that does scale better. If it doesn't go down like last Monday. But that, that's like, it's so rare. I think it was the first, is the first production outage in years. So that's the database.
I think you're forgetting about TinyBird and ClickHouse.
Yeah, so we are. I joke we're just a tiny bit front end. We're just a tiny bit wrapper, because all our services use TinyBird and ClickHouse. TinyBird is a ClickHouse database. We use both ClickHouse.com and TinyBird, and so these are time series databases. And we use this for everything. We use it in our firewall, like for actual stream processing. We use it for our analytics product, our observability product, our logs product, like everything that kind of where something happens over time, that would be done in ClickHouse. Another thing that I do want to mention, and which is a change to how we operate, is that our control plane API, so that's like, make a deployment or do an instant rollback or like stuff like that, right? This API lives in that. Those are written in TypeScript. So they're not production serving. It's the control plane API, and these APIs live in a Kubernetes cluster, so they don't run on Vercel, even though they're just TypeScript Node.js API servers, and you could technically run them on Vercel. And like we have now started running some of them on Vercel. And so that's a big change in how we operate. And I will tell you that running stuff on Vercel is better than on Kubernetes. That said, this will never completely migrate, because you do have these like bootstrapping, like circular dependency problems, where like, imagine you deploy something and that takes down Vercel, and now you can't fix it because the thing is running on Vercel and it's broken. Right? So like, that's why you have to do a little bit of like special case building the platform versus building on the platform, where like the lowest level layers have to be on separate infrastructure. But like, it's our goal that we move as much as possible of the code that we write ourselves into Vercel platform, because we like the Vercel platform, and it's such a better experience deploying there than going through 2015 era Kubernetes monolith terribleness.
Never again. Never again.
I do think also we did a deep dive into what would be necessary to run off of Vercel, and the only thing is the rollback service.
Yeah, so like our platform is very aggressive. We're like technically the only service we can run on Vercel is the instant rollback service. So you can always kind of get back to a known good state. I think that's I think it's only technically true. I think in practice that's very difficult to get to, but yeah, that would be the vision, where the only thing that you do like that is that.
Great. We have a question from Dom here. What are you most excited about in the next 2 to 3 years in frameworks, dev tools, and AI?
It's more short term, but we call it workflow pilled. so like, we have this like new library. I think it has gotten some enthusiasm and some pushback. Some people compare it to how when React decided to use JSX, and everyone's like, you dare putting XML into my JavaScript, and we use workflow into your JavaScript. I think compared to that, the reaction was actually very positive. And like, we see good initial uptake, but it's such early days. And I think I'm excited about just people being able to write this like best practice, robust code at essentially zero cognitive overhead. I did a project myself, which is very cool. Like I did like a podcast. Oh,
we're good.
Cool. We just had a power outage for a second, which apparently only impacted the screen, which is weird. So I built this like thing that turns blog posts into podcast style narrations. and which is a workflow, right? It does FFmpeg on Vercel, and like it does a bunch of stuff. And what I found really fascinating is that I was able to tell Cloud Code to migrate my non-workflow code to the workflow code. And Cloud Code knows nothing about this library because it came out like Thursday, like last week. And so like, obviously it's not in a training set. So I had to give it the URL, obviously, of the documentation, but then I was able to do it. And it kind of makes sense because it has to learn you actually have to learn almost nothing, right? Put the use workflow on this one place and you put use step on the other place, and that's it, right? Which is like, you can always make arguments over things that are more explicit being better, but like, I think in practice, what we see is that like, yeah, maybe there's arguments why the more complicated thing is better, but if you don't do it because it's too complicated, then it's maybe better to have something that's like essentially so easy to use that there's just no reason not to do it. So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, that's a short-term thing. I think we'll see hopefully good adoption over the next 6 months. I think otherwise, I'm I'm very happy that I get to go through this software revolution and of agents, where it's the earliest days. This only happens every 15 years or so. Last time was essentially like the iPhone coming out, and the one before was like the web, right? Like, so this is like a very rare thing. Everyone should cherish it because you have like 3 of them in your lifetime, maybe 5. So yeah, this is an exciting time.
Another proof point that you're writing docs for the LLMs now, and that all of the work done by the workflows team end up just being good instructions for Cloud Code.
Totally. We got a comment. 100% love the revolution. Love this.
Yeah, I used Cursor to implement some workflows there yesterday, and I got it mostly right. I messed up the use step a little bit. I just said, "Hey, that's not how use step works," and then from there it checked the docs and it figured it out. So got it in 2 shots, but
nice.
I think we'll be one shot and pretty quick. So we have one more question. How do you architect for observability, reliability, and error recovery in workflows that include AI agents, which may be non-deterministic?
Yeah, so it's essentially built in, right? So like we actually are hoping that this is becoming even simpler. But so what we shipped is a dedicated package to turn AI agents into workflow steps. And so very concretely, what this means is that every LLM invocation. So agents are like in the simple model where it's a tool and a loop thing, right? So it's essentially a step-based role-playing game where like it's always first you run the LLM, then the outcome comes back. Well, I want to run this tool. Then you run the tool. Then you give the answer to the LLM. The LLM says, "Okay, now I want to run this tool," and so forth. Right? Like this is always the step between you have a tool call and you have an LLM call. In this, again, like this is almost mind-blowing how simple this is. And so the way you integrate AI SDK with the workflow dev kit is that essentially every LLM invocation becomes a step, and every tool call becomes a step. And steps are by default retryable. You can configure like the retry strategy. You can configure when to give up, or like you can implement this special exception when you say, okay, like there's nothing more to do, you have to give up. And they're durable by default. So there's a substantial amount of robustness that you add to your application simply by following these 2 kind of ways of doing it, which is to say, okay, we're turning our tools into steps, which again, like there's nothing you have to do except put use step at the first line of your tool implementation. So it's like, that's an easy migration. And you use the AI SDK integrated workflow integrated package, which the other thing it does, it turns the LLM invocation into a separate step from the tool call.
Yeah, I mean, during the Ship AI keynote, Nico built an agent live on stage, and then Pranay, the tech lead of workflows, followed up and turned it into a resumable, durable, and observable workflow using the workflow SDK. Would recommend checking out those two pieces?
Yeah, we need to follow up with like more explicit docs, but the resumable streaming support is actually, I mean, it's incredible. So what this does is it solves this problem, which you can still observe in ChatGPT, for example, today, when you make a query and then you, I don't know, to simulate, you turn off your Wi-Fi and turn it back on while the response is streaming, and if you're, you don't get a resumption of that stream. And I actually personally published a package called Resumable Stream earlier this year that helps with this, like as a point solution. But if you use workflow together with AI SDK, it's completely built in, and that actually includes like ultra long running workflows. Let's say you have an agent that takes 5 days to run. And which, by the way, might just include that it has a human in the loop step where it waits for human in the loop, and it's the weekend and they only come back Monday, right? So that's how you get into these super long running workflows. And so you literally can, it's Friday and you turn off your laptop or you turn off your computer, you come back to the office on Monday, you turn your computer back on, Chrome restores your tabs, but really just means it reloads the page, right? And then you see it continuing to stream its work. So it works like over these like ultra long running times, which is really cool and like good way to visualize the robustness.
Jacob, are you going to ask the next question?
Yeah. So what's your approach to reversibility in platform changes? How do you design like feature flags or rollbacks or say safe defaults?
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the question. Like that's, I think, some of the most important things we do. We're like, I mean, certainly on the platform, every change is feature flagged.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no question. Like, and they might be really small ones. And when we use the Vercel platform, and it's one of the reasons why we love using it, we are big users of instant rollback. So I did mention how our control plane is lives on this Kubernetes world, except for the services that we have moved. The actual, when you go to Vercel dashboard, the actual app, that is a Vercel application, right? So we fully like live through the same workflow as everyone. And so we like, when we have, like, let's say we have an incident, the questions are always, okay, when did this start happening? Did we flip a flag at that moment? And if the answer is yes, then we will just revert that change. You don't have to wait for the expert of the flag to like come and join the incident. Maybe they're not even awake, right? We just do it. Then we have a policy, but it might also happen, okay, no feature flag happened, but there was a deployment at the time. Again, we then will immediately instant rollback to before. And we will then also, but that's the first thing. And essentially, that's the moment when you change the incident from like investigating to monitoring, because now you're in a good state, hopefully, right? Like you obviously have to check whether you actually fixed the problem, but assuming you did. And then the next thing we do is because we're using trunk-based development, we want to keep trunk clean. We then immediately revert the offending PR and force merge it. So that now trunk is clean and we can wait for the deployment to happen and then release the instant rollback. And then essentially from that moment on, we assign to the original person who made the bad PR that it's just their job to revert the revert.
I think one thing you have to touch on is making backwards compatible changes almost at all times.
Yeah,
and how we handle that.
Yeah, I mean it's a good point, right? Like if you're building API, it has to be backwards compatible. So never any new required fields in any type ever. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's one you have to swallow. There are some exceptions, like so this is absolutely true for a public API. Like one of the things that I love about Vercel is that we have SKU protection. And so let's say you build a server action or you build an API in tRPC, but it's only for yourself, right? You don't expect any public callers to ever call it. Then you can actually completely ignore backwards compatibility because SKU protection will actually keep you completely interlocked between client and server, and you can just forget about that. And so that's a really great way to live.
So I know we've got around 10 minutes left. So this is the final call to everyone in the community chat. If you have a question, drop it in. We do have a question that's just come up. So what are your thoughts on vibe coding? Do you believe in-depth tools like Vercel, Superbase, Java drivers can be genuinely done through LLMs only?
I mean, definitely not through LLMs only. Like I mentioned this like text-to-speech thing that I built, which was like fully vibe coded, and I think there's a space for that. But also even fully vibe coding, like today, definitely doesn't like. I mean, it's not impossible to do it without reading and understanding the code, but your speed and rate of success is still much higher. We also see, and which maybe is contradicting at least common beliefs, because I think everyone who actually tries has different experience. So first of all, our most senior engineers have the most benefit from LLMs. And they often work on infrastructure things and are heavily supported by agents. So it's definitely not the case that they're that this type of coding only suits itself to a certain type, but these folks still, I think, obviously are heavy, like they tend to be very sus about anything, right? And so they review the code, right? And so the reason why they're the best at using AI is because they're already probably very experienced code reviewers, and that just happens to be a main full-time job now. Now, I think one thing is really important, and as we're exploring what vibe coding actually means, like I do like the distinction between of vibe coding and vibe engineering. And so, like, can you use an agent to build the Vercel platform? Yes, but you're doing vibe engineering. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good time. If you're doing vibe coding, which I would pressure more towards the side where, like, hey, you just kind of, go with the flow and don't question the output too much. I think there's a space for that, but that's certainly for a different type of applications than building very sophisticated platforms.
I will also give another story. We have a really cracked engineer. I don't want to say his name, but he previously worked on React Scan, and he is vibe coding a full agentic browser environment. He had no experience with browser engineering, using Electron, using Chromium, or even doing native rendering. And he sort of vibe coded his way into a very viable browser, I would say. I saw a demo yesterday. He has so many cool hacks to communicate between the sidebar, the main window, the Command K shortcut bar. He even has a full Claude Code and VS Code instance embedded into his browser application. And he vibe coded, vibe engineered, I would say 95% of this. So it's really crazy to see.
Yeah. I think generally speaking, like the how it can extend your personal skill set is just incredible, right? Like doing things that would have taken you a month to learn, and now all you needed to know is like be good at coding in general, and the thing kind of overcomes all the barriers of like having to read like in documentation, existing code that might not even be available to you. Like it's really cool how it can expand your horizon.
It both lowers the floor and raises the ceiling. It's great.
Yeah.
Totally. But then there does get to a point though, right, where you vibe coded something, and if you are like totally non-technical, and you run through an issue, which we see a lot in the community, it's hard to fix that if you don't really know the foundation, especially if your LLM gets stuck in a cycle of trying to fix something and it just doesn't fix it no matter what you say.
Totally. You just need to switch LLM in that case.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Spend more tokens.
Yeah. Just buy more credits. Awesome. Well, we've got just a couple more minutes left. Let me just quickly check if we've got any more questions that's thrown on into chat. Since this is a community session, I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on what makes a community truly impactful at Vercel. Obviously, we've put in a lot of investments in communities over the years. In the last year alone, when I joined, we doubled the community team. We've really grown it. We keep hiring community type folks, and it's great to see. What do you think makes the community impactful at Vercel beyond the numbers and engagement.
Yeah, I think, I mean, one thing that's culturally like important for Vercel is that we're like, as a company, thriving on feedback. And like every time we have a problem, also that, I mean, I would count that as feedback. And also if it's, you know, like if you can help yourself, we would love to still hear like where people have friction, right? Like even just the paper cuts where you're able to like, you know, work around it. Like this type of stuff we want to fix. So I think it's, again, like the main thing is like, I mean, the way I really see impact in the community is that, you know, we do get to like discover the problems people have, and then hopefully also like the way that, you know, that's always like, it's a bad experience usually. So hopefully the community helps people overcome some of these experiences. But like that, like I'm really just like excited about all the feedback.
Yeah. Anything from you, Andrew?
Yeah, it's just great being able to build with the people that love to build with the things that we're creating. And it's very inspiring seeing what people can create.
Yeah, totally. This is really great to hear, guys. And I hope that everyone tuning in is like, hey, I should like drop more feedback in the community. So you should definitely drop that in community.vercel.com, or even just tag us directly on X. It was really cool the other day. Someone tweeted, who should I bother at Vercel? And everyone, like, it felt like the whole company kind of jumped on that train and shared the people that they should bother, which is great to see, and really shows that Vercel is that community first company, which is great.
And now that same app is actually a V0 community template, so any company can spin up their who to bother Vercel app.
I did not know it became a template. Nice, cool, awesome. So we're coming up to time here. I did want to ask one final question, which is for both of you. What are you excited about at Vercel that's coming up? If you can share any secrets, anything like that.
You know, we just, you know, sometimes you're sometimes you're building up a stack and then you flush it all at a conference. So I know, but I'll give you one thing. It's very nerdy, but we just had our demo days earlier today, and so we are really soon gonna ship post-quantum cryptography for Vercel's Edge network, which means that in the future, when maybe we actually build a useful quantum computer, it won't be usable to decrypt your communication with Vercel and any site hosted on Vercel.
That is pretty cool.
That's a
yeah,
crazy thing.
That's like a mic drop moment. End the stream right now.
I wish I went first. I'm excited to see more interesting agents being built. I think we have all the primitives that we were lacking maybe a year ago, and now that we can actually build things with them, I'm psyched to see what people can build.
I mean, that's definitely a good call, right? Like it's also still so early days that like having one that actually works in production, so that's news, right? Like it's worth just bragging about it on the community or on X and tagging folks, because I would definitely love to know about it and learn from folks, because it's still so early that you want to discover what people want to build. Like it's not yet like, you know, it's not drawn out in any particular way.
Yeah. Things happen serendipitously as well. You know, with our data science agent, we didn't have visualizations yet. And so I did like at D0, do this thing. And then someone's like, oh, I want to be able to share this with someone. And then we actually tagged V0 in the same thread, and it visualized the data that D0 just generated. So it's pretty cool to see a world in which it's agent to agent, or, you know, agents are working on our behalf, doing a lot of the orchestration workflows that we would normally string together ourselves.
Yeah, totally. Thank you both so much. We're at time now, but we really appreciate this, and we'd love to have you back at another future session. Yeah, thank you both.
Season 2 coming soon.
Love that. Thank you both.
Thank you. This was fun. Bye-bye.
All right, and yeah, thanks to everyone else for hanging out in the community and dropping your questions. This was really great. I'd like to, so next week we have another community session coming up on November 4th called Open Source Spatial Interfaces in the Cloud. So if you want to learn more about that, come back into the community, and we'll see you there.
Oh, I also wanted to share, we have one more open source stories run by Cap on Monday. So that's the final session. So definitely drop by to watch that. And what else? Is there anything else we should call out here, Jogan? I feel like there's so many things going on in the community. I guess if you want to learn more, go to community.vercel.com/events. But yes, thank you all so much for joining, and we will see you next week.
Have a great day, everyone.